what about those 3 skulls you have? I had never mentioned that I had 3 skulls. I said, yeah, I have those 3 skulls. What about them? He said, what do you think you're doing with those skulls? I said, well, I'm studying them anatomically. He said, do you think they're not having an effect on you? So then he told me what to do to establish a relationship that was not just me using, them for anatomical purposes. Previously had been human beings that had been dug up, probably did not want to be dug up, and now they were living in my desk. When I first came to India in 1973, I started the Ayurvedic College in 1974, and there was a movie came out, Jai Santoshi Ma. Jai Jai Santoshi Mata, Jai Jai Ma. There was no Santoshi Mata before this. But, oh my God, I went to see Santoshi Mata. All of these women were doing arati to the screen. Now there's temples of Santoshi Mata all over India. So Santoshi Mata didn't exist, and now she exists.
Around the time we began our podcast, we'd done a bunch of episodes related to Aghoris and Aghora. One of those episodes was with my mentor, Kiran Khalap, who had recommended that at some point we do a podcast with Robert Svoboda, the author of a trilogy of books about Aghora. There are very few English speakers who understand Aghora the way this man does. It was our honor having him on the show. He'd spent a majority of his 20s along with Swami Vimalananda, who was widely regarded to be one of the great Aghoris of our times. So if Aghora and Aghoris in general fascinate you, if slightly more fierce conversations fascinate you, trust me, you're going to enjoy this one. You're going to learn a lot from it. A lot of you keep requesting us to do more episodes with Rajarshi Nandi. Trust me, Aghora-based episodes are in the exact same zone. I do believe you should get ready mentally for these 2 episodes because they're extremely heavy. Some may call them dark, some may call them a little scary, but I promise you they will change you in some way. And if you feel like the episodes are getting too dark, if they're getting a little too heavy for you lately, what I will always say is that meditation, prayer, positivization, and spiritualism are tools that help strengthen your body, mind, and spirit. So if the episodes are troubling you, maybe don't watch them, honestly. But if you want to watch them and still gain the positive aspects of those conversations without letting them affect you, make sure you begin meditation very soon. For the last 2 years, the Beer Biceps team has built its own meditation app, Level Supermind. We've linked it down below. The app contains meditations for beginners, intermediates, and advanced practitioners. The link is given down below. Make sure you go check it out. And for more episodes just like this, make sure you follow TRS on Spotify. It's Spotify exclusive. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. This is a conversation with one of the most fascinating humans that I've come across thanks to the show. And I'm sure that you guys are going to gain exactly what I gained through these 2 conversations. The first one is more about the philosophy of Aghora. The second one is a more anecdotal episode. I'm sure that you're going to gain a lot from both. Brace yourselves, enjoy yourselves. This is Robert Svoboda on TRS. Robert Svoboda, sir. It's an absolute honor having you on the show. Ever since our common friend, Mr. Kiran Khalap, spoke about you, spoke about Aghoris on the show, but he said, no, you need to talk to Mr. Robert about this, not me. So welcome to the Ranveer show. Welcome back to India.
Thank you. Great to be here.
How are you feeling?
Good.
Aghoris are one of those topics that's really requested on the Indian internet. There's very few people who actually know details about it, honestly. So we've probably only had maybe 3 or 4 guests who've really spoken about this topic in detail. But I think you're the actual authority on it. Why is that, firstly? Why have you become this authority on Aghora?
Well, I really don't think of myself as an authority. If people think of me as an authority, it's only because of my mentor, who I refer to in the books I've written about him as Vimalananda, though he rarely referred to himself as Vimalananda. He didn't want people to know his birth name. And he was not a standard Aghori. A standard Aghori always sits in the smashan and eats food out of cooked in a human skull and wears only clothes that made from cloth that has come from corpses and things like that. He did that kind of sadhana, but his opinion was Aghora was not limited to that kind of attitude, that kind of behavior, that the attitude that you really have to have is that your entire life should be lived as if you were in a smashan, which honestly is the way things are, because we are living in a place where everything is currently alive, but the reality is everyone is going to die. And in the Mahabharata, when King Yudhishthira was asked what was the most amazing thing in the world, he said that people see death all around them, but nobody actually believes they're going to die. So in Vimalananda's opinion, the most important thing about Aghora is that awareness of death is something that you try to maintain 24 hours a day.
Okay. You're constantly thinking about death and then going about your daily business.
Because you have to. While you're alive, you have to do what's necessary. You have to do the things that is your kartavya, your obligation, the things that you personally need to do. But at the same time, you need to remember that all of what is happening is transitory. Everything is changing all the time. Everything that is created is going to be destroyed. So you have to have the attitude that everything is impermanent and that you are watching everything burn as if it was in a smashan, in a cremation ground.
Okay. Your book is extremely heavy. I have a friend who's read it, and I've read a few pages of it, and I've consciously not read the entire book because I wanted to have this conversation with you. And I do intend on reading your book. And I'm sure that all the listeners at the end of the 2 conversations that we have today are going to end up reading that book. Why do you think that people perceive that book to be this heavy, according to you yourself? And how old were you when the events of that book were taking place?
So the second question first.
Sure.
I first met Vimalananda when I had just turned 22. So, and he left the earth, left his body when I was 30. So it was during that period, it was all of my 20s, basically, when I was living in India. And why do people think that it's heavy? Because, some of the things that are described in there are very heavy, like sitting on a corpse and doing sadhana and working with spirits and working with intoxicants. These are things that all have a certain heaviness.
Explain the word sadhana.
Sadhana is something, it comes from a Sanskrit root that means to perform with the intention of achieving something. So sadhana means to have a desire to perform something. In Ayurveda, I studied Ayurveda for 6 years in Pune. In Ayurveda, what is sadhana means the taking of someone who is unwell and moving them in the direction of becoming of letting go of whatever disease they have, or someone who is well and making them even more well so they will have more resistance to disease. But in the spiritual sense, it means to acknowledge that you as an individual, you have come here. We all have come here because of the karmas that have brought us to this place. And we have to deal with those karmas. And if we just deal with those karmas without having any kind of perspective on them, like why am I here and where am I going, then we will probably get ourselves tied up, entangled in more things, and just continue doing what we've been doing. But the idea of sadhana is that we try to refine this to get rid of many of those karmic connections that we have so that we can move in the direction of connecting to a better perspective on the supreme reality. And the supreme reality is very simple. It's awareness, consciousness that doesn't have any qualities whatsoever.
Basically a set of disciplines that help you evolve spiritually and eventually wash away your karmas.
Yes.
Fair to say? Okay. Now I'll let you continue with the story.
Well, I think that but that is really the important thing. And Vimalananda was of the opinion that you should only move in the direction of Aghora Sadhana. And Aghora itself, I studied Sanskrit in the Ayurvedic college, so I'm very interested in Sanskrit. Aghora means not Gora. And Gora originally comes from the root gur. And gur means to cry frightfully or to frighten with loud crying, with loud shrieking and wailing. And originally that word Gora didn't have anything to do with the smashan. Originally it meant someone who was terrifying or awful in the original meaning of that word, which means someone that would make you be filled with awe, like the Devatas, like Indra and the other Vedic Devatas, like the Rishis, beings who were so connected to the world that is beyond this world that just looking at them and possibly hearing them, you would be filled with awe. And eventually that word came to mean anything that was really how we use the word awful now, awful, terrible, horrible. Aghora means taking everything that normal people, including you and me, when we are looking at it from the ordinary point of view, anything that is really horrible and terrible, like death, like war, like serious disease, like any kind of very intense situation, and acknowledging its terrifying or horrible or intense nature, but not allowing that to cause us to be disgusted or terrified or angry, not allowing ourselves to get diverted from dealing with it exactly as it has to be dealt with.
Okay. How did you even come to know that someone like the Swamiji even exists in India?
I think it's fair to say that unless someone of that nature wants you to meet them, you will never be able to meet them.
Do you think your purpose was to write the book about him?
I certainly think that's an important purpose. And he had another couple of purposes, another couple of reasons for that, things that he wanted me to do. But a very important reason was for me to be able to act as a witness to what he was doing and what he had done and what he was teaching, and to be able to translate that into a form that other people would be able to get some benefit out of.
Okay. Do you want to give us the story? What's the story there? How did you meet him at the start? How did you agree to document his journey, etc.?
I had been admitted to the Ayurvedic college in Pune. So I was studying Ayurveda. And I did not want to be obliged to take money from my parents. So I decided that I would arrange to get a grant from the U.S. government. That grant was to study how Ayurveda was being practiced in Pune. And for that purpose, I was interviewing all kinds of Ayurvedic doctors in and around Pune. And so one day I heard of someone who had come from Bombay and was said to know quite a lot about Ayurveda and other things, and about Tantra also. And at that time, I was under the impression that Tantra was a very dangerous thing, and I was told to avoid it. But I thought, well, at least I need to talk to him, and I will be very careful because Tantra is very dangerous. And so I went and met him, and conveniently for me, he was living a 20-minute walk away from the Ayurvedic hostel where I was in Pune. And I met him, and he seemed like a perfectly harmless person. He didn't seem like some sort of black magician or anything. And so I met him, and I said, I would like to give you this questionnaire that I prepared. And he said, let's not bother with the questionnaire. Let's just talk about this and that. And I was very interested. And over the next couple of days, I met him several times. And at the end of that period, I found out that he had answered all my questions without bothering to look at the questionnaire. So that was impressive. He also asked me whether there was a particular mole on one part of my body, which in fact there was. So it was clear that there was something to this. So we started to spend even more time. And he lived in Mumbai, but he had come to Pune for the races. At that time in his life, he owned thoroughbred horses, and the RWITC, the Royal West India Turf Club, during the monsoon races in Pune because the stables here in Bombay are underwater. So he came back several times during that period for the races. I met him several times. And then we went to Alandi together. Alandi is just outside Pune, where Jnaneshwar Maharaj's Samadhi is. And then I was very interested, and then I started to move in that direction.
Do you want to give the audiences some context on what he did in the real world? He was just a normal human being going about his normal life, but also was a practicing Aghori behind the scenes.
Yes, he had spent time as a sadhu, mostly in Girnar, as a naga, a naked sadhu.
Really?
But then he was told by his guru that he had to come back to the world. He had to get married. He had to have a family, and that there were things he needed to do in the world. And so he came back, and even before that, he had been introduced to Aghora. He had not wanted to be introduced to Aghora, but there was someone who had deliberately taken him out of Bombay to Mithila and introduced him to Aghora. But once he was introduced, he started performing Aghora Sadhanas, and he would do that even while he was living in Bombay wearing ordinary clothes. When he was wandering around and going to the race course, he would wear ordinary clothes. When he went to the smashan, he would wear what was appropriate in the smashan.
A mashan is a graveyard.
A smashan is a cremation ground.
Okay.
And he, at different times, he owned a dairy in Borivali here in North Bombay. He owned a rock quarry on Sheva, which is an island in the harbor here in Bombay. And so he had done a number of different things in his lifetime. When I knew him, he owned racehorses, and he was racing the horses and betting on them periodically and making money off of them and supporting himself that way.
But how had he taken up being a Naga sadhu in the first place? What was his childhood like? Like, how did it lead up to like the Naga sadhu?
Well, his childhood was his father was a member of a family who had originally come from Gujarat and had become very rich over a period of time. He himself was the 15th generation living here in Bombay, and they lived on Malabar Hill. And they had a very large bungalow that I never saw because it had been sold and broken down. But interestingly enough, there's a building on Malabar Hill called El Cid, and our racehorse trainer was living in El Cid at that time. And El Cid was built where the garden of that bungalow was. So, as sadly is sometimes the case, there was a disagreement when the Hindu undivided family was broken up. There was a disagreement. There was litigation, which means the lawyers made a lot of money and everything. But so slowly the affluence diminished. But he was still very young when there was a Jain sadhu, a Suri, who had, even while he was still very much a very young man, probably in his late teens, took him to Darbhanga, to Mithila, and got him. And he was his parents were devotees of a Bengali saint named Harnath Thakur. Harnath Thakur. But they were devotees of Harnath Thakur, but his family belonged to the Pushti Sampradaya, which is the sect that was developed by Vallabhacharya about 400 years ago, the fifth of the five great teachers of Advaita Vedanta. So that his family was a very, very sattvic, very mild vegetarian kind of family. And as was he was never interested in doing this kind of very intense sadhana. But this Jain Suri, this sadhu, this holy man, had looked at his horoscope and saw that he could succeed at a particular kind of sadhana, at a particular kind of process for gaining the attention of and creating a connection between himself and a particular devi, a particular goddess. There are many, many devis and devatas here in India. Some of them are Saumya, some of them are gentle, like Vishnu is gentle, and Lakshmi, Saraswati, they're gentle. Some of them are Ugra, and Ugra means terrible, horrible, intense, like Kali and Tara and Chinnamasta, blood-drinking goddesses, and like Bhairava and Bhairavi. Bhairava literally means he who terrifies. So that Jain sadhu understood that Vimalananda could do this process, perform this sadhana, for which he had to sit on a corpse, and that he could succeed at it. Because just doing sadhana is one thing. Being able to succeed at it is also very important. So without telling him what he was going to do, he said, let's go to Darbhanga, let's go to Mithila. There's something very interesting you will see there. And once they got there, late at night, it was a new moon night, which is a good time for doing this kind of thing. He then said, okay, now that you're here, you're going to have to sit on this corpse and you're going to have to repeat this mantra. And Vimalananda said, I'm not going to do that. And the Suri said, well, if you don't do that, what's going to happen is you see those men over there, they will kill you, and then I will sit on your corpse. So what would you prefer? And then Vimalananda thought, maybe it is better for me to at least sit. I mean, who knows? I may die anyway, but at least I would prefer to die trying it out instead of definitely dying because those thugs over there are going to kill me.
But this was a Jain monk.
Yes.
But aren't Jains the most sattvic, and aren't they at the other end of the spectrum?
And the vast majority of Jains are at the other end of the spectrum. But of course, sometimes what's on the surface is different from what's underneath. And this Jain sadhu had been worshiping a particular yantra, but he had not wanted to do this shava sadhana, this particular kind of process of sitting on the corpse. He had not wanted to do that himself, because that itself would be a karma. So he had been looking for somebody that would do it for him.
So even the Jain sadhus actually follow aspects of Tantra and Aghora?
Some of them do. A very small number of them do. Most of them follow the tenets of the Jina Dharma. But a very small number of them, and I never met this, his name was Jina Chandra Suri. He passed on many, many years ago. So I never met him. But I have no idea how many other people would do that. And generally speaking, especially for this kind of thing, you don't tell people that you're going to go out and sit on a corpse. That's because they may not like it. And then,
okay.
So how many Jain, I imagine that very, very few Jain sadhus do this, but this particular one was interested in doing this.
And this is sometime in the 60s or 70s?
This would have been probably in the 30s.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So Vimalananda was really old when you had met him?
He passed on when he was at 67 in 1983. So he had been born in 1916. So this would have been, he was probably right around age 20. So this would have been in the mid 1930s. So there he was. So now, and there is the corpse. And now he realizes he has to sit on the corpse. And now the Jain gives him a bottle of, he used to call it Beurda, anyway, country liquor. And he is, Vimalanandaji at this point has never tasted alcohol before. But he thinks, and what am I going to do here? And the Jain says, you have to drink that whether you like it or not. So he drinks it, gets very drunk naturally, and thinks that, okay, and this is the first time he's been drunk also. So now he's drunk. There's these men who are going to kill him if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do. There's this dead body here. He sits on the dead body the way he's supposed to. He starts to repeat the mantra, and he has a mala, a rosary, and he repeats just a very few mantras, and a jackal. A jackal is a small animal. It's the dog family. A jackal comes to him and bites him and draws a drop of blood. And suddenly, there is a goddess standing in front of him. The jackal has come just to collect the blood, and now the goddess is there.
Like the jackal turned into the goddess.
Yes. And then she says, Varambrihi, what would you like? Please ask a boon. He said, I didn't ever want to do this, and I would like to go back to Bombay, please. And she said, you ask for something more meaningful, please. And he said, no, I need to go back to Bombay. So she said, okay. And she took him back to Bombay.
Was the goddess Tara?
Yes, Smashan Tara. So there are many different varieties of Tara. The Buddhists have the Tibetan Buddhists have 21 different varieties of Tara, whereas if we look from the Mahavidya point of view, there's a group of 10 goddesses here in India called the Mahavidyas. And that Tara is an intense version of Tara. Ugra Tara, Ugra means horrible, terrible, intense. Smashan Tara, meaning the Tara of the cremation ground. And sometimes she's called Neela Saraswati. So Saraswati is the goddess of learning. And she's normally shown as being wearing white clothes and having a veena, a lute, and a book, and being very Saumya, very gentle. But the blue version of her is this very intense blood-drinking goddess. So there he is back in Bombay. So, and then he starts repeating the mantra again, and the goddess appears to him again.
He's immediately transported back.
Immediately transported back. That's what he told me.
Okay.
And of course, he is now wondering whether maybe he dreamed the whole thing, but he notices he still has the mala in his hand. There's no corpse. There was no cremation ground. He's sitting in his house in Bombay, but he has the mala. And he thought, well, I didn't have this mala before. So then he starts repeating the mala, and the goddess appears before him again. And then she says, you need to go to the smashan, to the cremation grounds, and continue repeating this, and then we will talk about what to do next. And so then he went to the cremation ground, and then he started establishing a relationship with this goddess.
Where was the ground?
I am pretty sure he went to Banganga, which is the cremation ground that it would be closest to where his house was on Malabar Hill. He did a lot of sadhana in the Worli Smashan, also here in Mumbai. And there came a point where he had to go to Benares, because Benares is a place which is sometimes called the Maha Smashan, the greatest of the cremation grounds.
Do you still find Aghoris in the one in Mumbai? Because I know that they visit Benares.
There definitely are Aghoris in Benares. I go to the Banganga cremation ground periodically. I've never seen any Aghoris there. I expect that they probably do come there, but it's not a well-known haunt of Aghoris.
Okay. What happened after this in his story?
Well, it took him a while to get used to this idea that he had suddenly been transported back to Bombay. Now he was establishing a relationship with a blood-drinking goddess. Meanwhile, on the outside, he still had to behave in an appropriate way with his parents and his sisters and so on. And It took a few days, but the Jina Chandrasuri came back from Darbhanga and then was telling him about how he knew that this was going to work out and how it was going to be great because now he was going to tell Vimalananda, Jina Chandrasuri was going to tell Vimalananda exactly what to do, and then they would make a lot of money and be successful. And Vimalananda said, "Stop right there." I'm paraphrasing here. I never wanted to do this. You forced me to do this. But now that I've done this, I don't have any interest in you. I'm interested only in the goddess. So you please go away.
But how were they going to make money?
I'm sure he had there are all kinds of methods of Shakti is Shakti. So if you take Shakti and you manipulate it in certain ways, money is a kind of Shakti, beauty is a kind of Shakti, fame is a kind of Shakti. There's so many different. Shakti means energy.
Okay, I've got to stop you here just to give some context to some of our viewers. We had someone called Rajarshi Nandi on the podcast recently. He's an advanced Tantra practitioner, and he's taught me and the audiences, and I'm sure it's the same audience watching this particular podcast. He taught us about Tantra, so I'm going to do a bit of a recap. He said that the goal of life is spiritual evolution. The aim of life is to achieve nirvana or moksha or enlightenment, connecting with God once again. If you pray, it's like you're walking towards that goal. Imagine the purpose to be like a road. If you pray, you're walking on that road. If you do bad things in the world, if you do bad karmas, you're walking backwards on the road away from that goal. If you meditate deeply, it's like you're in a car which is moving on that road. It's going faster than normal. If you practice Tantra, you're going in a really fast car. And if you're going about Aghora in your life, it's like you're sitting in a Formula 1 car, like a race car, and then you're going on the road. So it's an extremely fast way of evolving spiritually. What I understand here is that the practice that the Jain monk made Vimalananda do was some Aghora-based technique which hastened his own spiritual evolution. He was able to summon the deity, and the deity appeared in front of him. Probably the Jain sadhu saw some kind of spiritual potential in Vimalananda already from a previous life and said that, okay, you're more capable of calling this goddess. The thing is, when you see a deity and you achieve that spiritual evolution, you're able to extract Shakti or some kind of power from the process of Tantra. And you're saying that power can definitely be used for spiritual evolution, but it can be used for other things like beauty, like fame, like money. Would you like to add anything to this context?
Well, just to say that this is in Indian tradition, there's 4 different spiritual paths. The first is Pipilika Marga, the path of the ant. Just what you're talking about is walking. An ant will walk, it'll move in all different directions, eventually it'll get to where it's going. And if the ant falls over, the ant will ignore that, it will get back up and it will keep walking. The second is a little more direct, and that's the Meena Marga. Meena means fish. So the fish is swimming upstream. It's a little more work, but it can still hide behind a rock and take a rest now and again. The third is the Markata Marga. Markata means monkey. So you're jumping from limb to limb in the tree. You're moving a lot faster than the fish, but if you fall out of the tree, you may break a bone. And sometimes monkeys actually break bones when they fall out of trees. And the fourth is the Vihangam Marga, and Vihangam means bird. So if you jump off of the branch and you fly, that's great. And if you jump off the branch and you crash, then you're dead.
So
that's Aghora.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask you. What are the actionables in these 4?
Yeah.
So the ant one is just prayer, the basic stuff.
Absolutely. You keep your mind on where you're going. You may not have that. You're being diverted by your family, and you're being diverted by your job, and you're being diverted by the things you're attracted by. But you keep every day going back in the direction of trying to get to where you want to go.
So this would just be basic prayer, love for God.
Just basic.
Okay.
And you have a desire, but it's not a very strong desire. All these other desires are stronger.
Gotcha.
Then you get a stronger desire. Then you're meditating more. Then you're paying less attention to other things you might desire and more attention to direction you want to go in. But you still don't have that much momentum. So it still takes some period of time, and there's still things you desire, because life is all about desire. And there are always, especially nowadays, all kinds of things that people desire. So you're moving forward, but their desires are still tripping you up occasionally. Then you start moving. Now we're in the Tantra aspect of things. Now you're seriously moving forward, and now you are really focused, and you have created a definite pattern of spending several hours a day or several days at a time all day long focusing on this process. But still, even after you've been focused all this time, once you're not focused, once you're back in the world is still there to try to grab your attention, and you still may get diverted. And now that you have more energy, that diversion may take you a lot further away from the path.
This is the monkey path.
That's the monkey part of it.
What about the breaking bones aspect of it?
Well, suppose that you are moving forward and you are following this sadhana. You are following this practice of working hard to achieve something, and you're collecting energy inside you. In the physical body, energy means prana. Prana means the life force. And for people sometimes think of prana as being a symbolic thing or some kind of a way of speaking, but prana is a real thing. It is a real force. The Chinese call it qi. It's something that you can experience in yourself, and you can feel, and you can understand, you can circulate the prana. The more that you accumulate your prana, and how will you accumulate it? By not having it get diverted. Every time, wherever you put your attention is where your prana is going to go. If you put your attention on your screen all day long, all of your energy is going to go into your device. If you put your attention on making money all day long, all your energy is going into making money. If you put your energy into trying to move in the direction of reality, then that's where your energy is going to go.
You mean God?
Like, let's call it God. Some people don't believe there is a God. There is a reality. We could call it God. We can call it, God is a limiting word for something that is the reality that has no qualities ultimately. That simply is Sat Chit Ananda, or sometimes I even like better, Satyam Ritam Brahat. It's true and real. There is a ritam, there's a rhythm to it, and it's vast. It encompasses all the universes, things that we have not even been able to dream of imagining. Okay. So you're moving in that direction. You're accumulating energy for going in this direction. So you're driving down the road. You're on the expressway. You're driving as fast as you can. But then supposing your attention gets diverted, and at the moment your attention is diverted, there is a big piece of rock in your way, and you run into that piece of rock, that's not going to be good for you. And that piece of rock could be some kind of very complicated karma that you suddenly comes into your life at a particular moment. Or it could be a desire that all of a sudden takes hold of you and you can't let go of it, and it's dragging you in that direction. So it's very important to get rid of all of this as much as possible in order to be able to move forward.
Okay. All right.
Actually, if I could add one thing here, I looked for it on YouTube, but I've heard that it's there. I haven't been able to find it yet. But there was a film made about 25 years ago by a German film crew about a young Aghori who was in a smashan, a cremation ground, either in Haridwar or Rishikesh. And they went there and they saw him sitting there, and he was cooking his rice in a human skull, and he was wearing clothes. He was wearing cloth from a corpse. And he ignored them for several days. But at some point, he became interested in the camera. And then he started talking to them. And he said that his guru, who was in Dehradun, and the crew eventually interviewed the guru also, that the guru had told him to sit in the smashan, in the cremation ground, and not pay attention to anybody or anything, but just focus on meditating on Shiva and cooking the rice in the skull and wearing the dead people clothes and just focusing on death. And that's what he was told to do. But he became interested in the camera. And then he started talking to the film crew. And then it didn't take very long before he was taking the film crew with him to Calcutta, which is where he's from, and showing them off to his family and taking them to the red light district to show that he could be around the prostitutes without being tempted. And then they interview the guru again, and the guru says, "Do you see how difficult Aghora is? I told him just to go to the cremation ground and ignore everything. And look what happened. He ignored everything until the one thing he could not ignore came to him, and it dragged him away from what he was supposed to do."
Which was the camera.
Which was the camera. So it's not just that you may have some spirit that will come in and disturb you. It's not just that the jackals or the disease or whatever may come and disturb you. It's whatever it is you have not digested in yourself that can come and drag you away from this path. It's very difficult.
This particular Aghori wanted fame?
Well, he didn't even know that he did. But then once that possibility was put in front of him, then, the foreigners, the Ferengs are here. And now it's not only I have been acknowledged as a great Aghori, and not only here, but also in foreign, I will be acknowledged as a great Aghori. He didn't even realize he had no idea that would happen until it happened. And this if you, and Vimalananda would always say, you can be sure that if you try to move in the direction of Tantra, and especially Aghora, that you're going to find whatever your limitation is, it's going to come up and you're going to have to deal with it. And it will happen at the least convenient moment. And that's why Vimalananda always said, always live with reality, because if you don't, reality will come to live with you. And that's what happened to this kid. And that's what happened to so many people.
Yeah. I think the process of Tantra, and therefore Aghora, entails that you have to go through a lot of tests. And most people fail those tests.
Most people do.
Okay.
Most people do.
You were never tempted to be an Aghori yourself?
I have certainly, under Vimalananda's instructions, performed Aghora sadhanas, but to actually be an Aghori means to transform yourself so that 24 hours a day you are in that state of that Aghori state of mind. So if that ever happens, then I will feel like I've achieved something. But otherwise, I have done whatever sadhanas he instructed me to do, and some of them were Aghora type sadhanas.
Do you want to talk about any of them, if you're comfortable?
Yes. I mean, certainly I never did, I never tried, he never told me to try to sit on a corpse. I have sat in cremation grounds in many different places, including in Benares and at Banaganga. I got kicked out of the Pune Smashan once, the Pune cremation ground. And it was my own fault because I was going there every night. And one day I gave a gift to the guy who was the superintendent there because he was kind enough. And I had gone to the Pune Municipal Corporation, and I had gone to the health commissioner office because they managed the cremation ground. And I got permission from the additional health commissioner. And so I had my permission and I showed it to that guy. But it's always nice to offer a little something to the karmachari, to the worker. But being young and stupid, I didn't realize that if I only offer it to the superintendent and not to the other workers, then they're going to feel like they were being left out. So after a few days, everything was going along very well. But after a few days, one Sunday night, I remember it was a Sunday, and this was probably 35 years ago. And back then, of course, there was no internet and there were no phones. And there was, however, here in Bharatavarsha, in Hindustan, there was the Sunday night movie. And so I'm here I built a fire. I'm sitting there worshiping the fire. And somebody shows up and he introduces himself as the health commissioner of Pune. And I say, yes, I have permission from the additional health commissioner. And this makes him, Burdkarge even more. He makes him even more upset. And he says, "Who is the additional commissioner?" "I am the health commissioner, and I'm telling you, you must leave immediately." I said, "But I'm in the middle of doing this." He said, "You must leave immediately, otherwise those 20 men over there will come and beat you up and drag you away." So I looked over and I saw the 20 men over there, and I thought, it's time for me to leave. So I said, "Okay, there's you, and there's this fire here. That's the karma is between you and it." And so I departed. So
You mean the health commissioner and the fire?
yes, because he's interrupted what I've started. So he has performed that karma. So now it's between him and the fire. In any event, I mean, why he did this, maybe was it because I was obviously a Videshi, a foreigner? Was it because, I don't know. So there were certain limitations to what I could do. But Vimalananda was kind enough to point out, for example, I mean, certain things just have appeared in my life. And like when I was in the Ayurvedic college in Pune, we were studying anatomy, and we were studying modern anatomy according to the book of Cunningham. And so we were dissecting a body. And in order to understand the anatomy of the head, I had purchased 3 skulls. Now, where the skulls came from, of course, I didn't ask, but the guy who was in charge of the anatomy lab arranged them. They were not expensive back then. It was like, 12 rupees a piece. So I had these 3 skulls. And one day after I met, and I'd been studying them, where does this muscle go? And that Vimalananda said to me, "What about those 3 skulls you have?" And I had never mentioned that I had 3 skulls. I said, "Yeah, I have those 3 skulls. What about them?" He said, what do you think you're doing with those skulls?" I said, "Well, I'm studying them anatomically." He said, "Do you think they're not having an effect on you?" I said, I don't know. So he said, "Yes, definitely they are." So then he told me what to do to establish a relationship that was not just me using, them for anatomical purposes, but me acknowledging that they previously had been human beings that had been dug up, probably did not want to be dug up, and now they were living in my desk. And so for many years, they and I had a particular relationship.
You mean the ghosts of those human beings?
But it was not so much that ghost is a big word. So it's quite possible that these individuals had been reborn already, but still at a level possibly not conscious for them, there was still a connection to this previous existence that they had had because their bones were still there. And that's one reason why in this country, the cremation is so encouraged, because that destroys they're not even bones or there may be a few pieces, but they all then go into the water. So there's no body left for the spirit to connect to. So sometimes there may be a spirit remaining there. I think that if the spirit had been very strong with these 3 skulls, they probably would have started harassing me already. But it was strong enough that after I started paying attention to them, that I started to realize that, in fact, they were definitely a presence there. And once I got them to understand that, look, I don't want you interfering with my awareness, and I'm going to do this for you so that you will also get some benefit out of it, then we had a nice relationship for several years.
So many questions, sir.
So, I mean, that's when, and like I say, that it's not like I went out of my way to go find some skulls and then, do something to them and control the spirit and so on. They were already there.
A lot of your life has been dictated by destiny.
Exactly. A tremendous amount.
I feel at this point you have like 5 or 6 podcasts in you. Like you have so much to say from your whole life, and you didn't even spend your entire life in India. You went to other places in the world. I'm sure you've kind of dived into the version of Tantra that they had there as well. At least you've gotten to know about it. I have so many questions for you. The one question that's like sprouting up in my mind right now is actually related to your childhood. I'm assuming you grew up Christian.
Yes.
And Christianity has a similar yet very different outlook on God and heaven, like when you compare it to something like Hinduism. I have a few Christian friends where I've discussed Hinduism in detail with them, and they're very open to learning about it. But the fundamental question that they ask is also often related to demonology. When you talk about deities, when you talk about God, versus the Christian understanding of God, where God is the Almighty. When I asked this question to the Tantra expert Rajashi Nandi, he said that in Tantra, it's believed that Parabrahm or universal God is so advanced that it possibly almost doesn't even care about human beings, but the deities are there to help you. Now, you're someone who was raised as a Christian. When you came to India, did you have some kind of relearning to do in order to absorb this concept of what deities are? And say if there are Christians watching this, what and how would you explain what deities are and how is it related to God? Or are these sort of demons? Are they angels? Is it a version of something related to demonology? Like, how would you go about explaining this? Because I feel it's a fundamental philosophy that needs to be broken down in this episode as well.
I think to answer that question, I have to start off by saying that there is reality and there are structures that people create to assist them to connect to reality. So a religion, in Sanskrit, often we use the word sampradaya. So a sampradaya is a particular way of doing things. There are particular rules. There are particular attitudes. And like the Pushti Sampradaya, they follow what Sri Mahaprabhuji Vallabhacharya taught. And following those rules means that you are part of that Pushti Sampradaya.
And the goal is always spiritual evolution?
The goal is always spiritual evolution. Now, different people, different sampradayas will have quite possibly different goals. So the goal of the Pushti Sampradaya is Lord Krishna, Bhagavan Shri Krishna. The goal of the Shaiva Siddhanta is Lord Shiva. The goal of the Ganapatya Sampradaya is Ganapati. So the goal of Christianity is Yesu Christa, is Jesus. There are different sects, different religions have different goals.
So you're saying that within Hinduism, there's actually multiple different religions as well?
Absolutely. And Vimalananda himself never liked the word Hindu. He said, it's a Persian word. And why should we be defining ourselves as, in a Persian way? Hindu, of course, is a corruption because the ancient Persian and Sanskrit are close together, but the Persians use H, whereas Sanskrit uses S. So instead of saying Sindhu, they said Hindu. So that word Hindu is really Sindhu. That's the Indus River. So the people who live around or beyond the Indus River, they called Hindus. Vimalananda preferred to think of himself as a Vedic, someone who was following in the path that comes originally from the Vedas. So Aghora, for example, and Tantra, they emerge from the Atharva Veda. There are 4 Vedas, and the Atharva Veda is in some ways, the youngest Veda, but in other ways, it's even older than the other Vedas. It comes from paths that are not mainline to the Vedas. So a sampradaya is a sect, a religion. Vimalananda believed, as do I, that what's more important is reality. The religion, the sampradaya is important, and if you're in a certain sampradaya and you're following it, you should observe its rules. But he always used to say that he personally did not believe in sampradaya. He believed in sampradaha. And sampradaha means incineration. That you should burn down all of your concepts, burn down all of the limitations you have in your mind, and recognize that there is only one reality behind everything. In the Vedas, they say, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. Truth is, there is only one truth. But those who know truth, every one of those individuals will describe it in different ways because each individual has a different perspective on truth. Each individual has a different perspective on reality. So when it comes to me, for example, I never, the Christianity, the religion with all the restrictions and I never had much of an affinity for that. I had a strong affinity for Jesus of Nazareth, for the Christ. And I developed at an early age a personal relationship, which I've maintained up until now.
You're still connected to Jesus Christ?
Absolutely. He's my Kula Devata, my Kula Guru. Kula means family in this case. Kula means many things. But in this case, it is the religion of my Kula, of my family, of my physical ancestors. And as Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said once to somebody who was considering changing his religion, he said, "Can you change your father?" So it's like that's something that even if I don't focus a tremendous amount of attention there, that will always be present. I will always acknowledge that. And Vimalananda himself was a devotee of Jesus Christ because he believed, as do some other people here in this country, that both Christ and Krishna were amshas, were portions of the Rishi Maitreya, and so that they're both avatars. They're sort of like brothers or cousins or something. So for him, worshiping Jesus and worshiping Krishna was almost the same sort of thing because he also did not regard sectarian worship of Krishna or of Jesus as being important. He regarded having a personal relationship with both of those as being important.
I'm a part of something called YSS, the Yogoda Satsang Society, which is Yoganand Paramahansa's school.
Mm-hmm.
And we worship 6 gurus, of which 2 are Jesus Christ and Lord Shri Krishna.
Yes.
There's many Hindus who get offended that I place a photo of Jesus Christ next to Krishna, and there's many Christians who get offended that I place a photo of Krishna next to Jesus. How do you explain it to people who get offended with these concepts? Because everyone's kind of living in a world now where they think, no, my religion is superior to your religion, without understanding what reality truly is. Would you like to dive a little bit?
I mean, it really does depend on who I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to someone who is very much tied down to their sampradaya, to their sect, whether it's Christian or Hindu or Muslim or anything else, or Zoroastrian, I've spent a lot of time with Parsis and Iranis. I recognize that trying to explain precisely how I see things may not get me anywhere. So if they need to feel that I'm a Gnostic or a kafir or a heretic or something, I let them feel that way. But if it's somebody who seriously wants to understand that, I try to explain that, Jesus made it very clear that there was one reality. And Krishna also made it very clear that there was one reality. Krishna, and even in this country, there have been times when Vaishnavas, followers of Vishnu, and Shaivas, followers of Shiva, have fought with one another, have killed one another, because each one of them said, my Devata is the most important. It is what is most important, in my opinion, is to recognize that for every individual, there is a particular path in a particular incarnation that is going to work for them best. For many people, it is one Devata, one God, one Guru, one direct path. For some people, it is not so much one as having more than one. That doesn't mean having 20 and having your attention divided among those 20, that means having a direct connection to whoever it is you're having that connection to. And if that connection is one that you can honestly say to yourself, being very calm and very introspective, that is genuine for you, then that is genuine for you. And for me, if I sincerely believe that the supreme reality has ultimately no name and no form, no qualities whatsoever, that it can take on any qualities that it wants to, then I can certainly feel when I am worshiping Jesus that I am indirectly worshiping whatever other devatas I may have a relationship with. And if I'm worshiping, and I have a relationship with certain devatas, like Ganapati. I lived here in Maharashtra for many years, and I have a direct and very genuine and sincere connection to Ganapati. But I personally, they are different externally. They are different in their qualities. They're different in how you worship them, but they are still manifestations of that one supreme reality.
Which people refer to as God.
Which people refer to as God. Now, the problem is sometimes that, let's say, Christians, they refer to God as Abraham was thinking about God, and so do the Jews, and so do the Muslims. And Abraham, certainly, to have created these religions that billions of people worship, he must have been quite a guy. But still, that doesn't mean that he was perfect. And he had his own limitations, and partly they were the limitations of the time he lived in. That was back in a time when sacrifices were happening. Sacrifices were happening in the Vedic religion also. Sacrifices were happening everywhere. And that's why Jesus came along and said, I will be the sacrifice. You forget about all this sacrifice thing. And Jesus defined his religion very clearly and easily and simply. Number one, God is love. And number two, love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. And remember that anything that you do is going to come back in your direction. I mean, he called it the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And remember, he was explaining to people who did not have the advantage of abstruse philosophical thought like the people here have had for thousands of years. So he was trying to explain the law of karma to them. If you do to somebody else something that is violent, the law of karma is going to send violence back in your direction. It may not be today or tomorrow. It may be after one more incarnation or 10 incarnations, but that's going to happen. That's the nature of the universe. That's Newton's third law of motion. Action, reaction.
How do you explain deities?
If you look, let's just start with here in Bharatavarsha in India. How many people still worship Vedic deities? Almost nobody. Indra, Pusha. But they were worshipped back in the past. And there came a point sometime between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago where things shifted. Vishnu originally was just one out of 12 Adityas, but now he is Vishnu. He is for many people, the supreme deity. Shiva was originally Rudra, and Rudra was a storm god, and Rudra was not even given a direct part of the sacrifice. He was given the Uchishta. He was given what was left over. And now he's Lord Shiva. So as time changes and as people change, I like to think of devatas as kind of like co-creations of the supreme reality and the human being. We are very, very limited, we human beings. And our sense organs give us a lot of information, but they give us just a tiny amount of information compared to how much information we could take in. And of everything we take in, we only can consciously connect to a tiny amount of information. So what Maya is the creation It's the skin of the world. It's what we interact with. And we need to interact with it so that we can do what we have to do every day, which is find something to eat and avoid being eaten. In the past, you had to worry, and still in some places, you have to worry about being eaten by a leopard or a tiger or something. But now it's more like having your attention eaten by your device or by people who are trying to, this is Bombay, people who want to extract something from you in some way. So Maya is there, and if you can look beyond Maya, you can see that things are not actually the way that they appear to our senses. But how far can we look? It's like we're kind of like appliances. You plug into the wall 240 volts, but if you plug them into 440 volts, they will burn up. Those big transmission lines, they're 100 kilovolts, 200, 300 kilovolts. They would incinerate your appliance. So the big Parama Devata, that's millions of volts, billions of volts. The Maha Devatas, Maha Ganapati, Maha Saraswati, Maheshwari, Mahalakshmi, they're still at the 100,000 volt level. So then you have to even attenuate that down to the smaller level where you have the locals. You have Mahaganapati, but also you have the Ashtavinayaka. You have the Ganapati and Pali and Mahad and Teur. And those devatas are not as supreme. They're connected directly to the supreme, but they have more of a personality. They have more of a location on earth. It's easier for us to connect to them. So the devatas, in order for us, because God is so compassionate, God says, I want people to be able to connect to me, but I am this big, and here are these tiny ants here. So I may look at the ant and I may think, oh, how cute the ant is. But if I try to pet the ant will get smushed. So God can't come down here and say, I'm going to give you I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give a laddu to the ant. What is the ant going to do? The laddu will land on the ant and that will be the end of the ant. So instead, God gives the laddu to an assistant who gives it to an assistant. So we get a teeny tiny amount, but which often is more than we can digest because we're such teeny tiny things.
And again, I got to bring you back to Aghora.
To the devatas and to Aghora. So what happens is these devatas are co-creations of human beings and the supreme reality. And so the devatas, and there were Vedic devatas, most people are not worshiping them now. Now they're worshiping a group of devatas, but devatas are being created all the time. I was just in Tamil Nadu and I visited the main Devi of Pollachi district. Her name is Masani Amman, and Masani comes from Shmashan. And she started off life as a young girl who was unrightly put to death by the local chieftain. And people realized that this was so wrong that they were worried that she might get very upset and start going berserk. And so they came and started worshiping her. And she herself started to move in the direction. First, she started off as a human being. Then she started moving in the direction of connecting to the Devi. And so she has, over this past few hundred years, in spite of starting out as a human, she now has been possessed by the Devi. And she is now the chief Devi of this district. So this kind of thing is happening all the time. People are moving in that direction. The God is moving down in our direction. And at different places in different ways, certain devatas are created. And those devatas are connected to the transcendent devatas. It's sort of like step-down transformers, but they're always changing because human beings are always changing. When I first came to India in 1973, I started the Ayurvedic College in 1974, and there was a movie came out, Jai Santoshi Ma. Jai Jai Santoshi Mata, Jai Jai Ma. There was no Santoshi Mata before this. But, oh my God, I went to see Santoshi Mata. All of these women were doing arati to the screen, and now there's temples of Santoshi Mata all over India. So Santoshi Mata didn't exist, and now she exists. Because people are worshiping her, they're putting their energy into her, they're putting their attention on her, their prana is feeding her so she can continue to work with us and to assist us in what we're trying to do. So Indra has not gone anywhere, but no one is feeding him, so he doesn't have any Shakti anymore. So what can he do? Only those things that get, and this is not just in India, the ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses, almost none of them, people pay some attention to Sakmat and to Taut and to, but otherwise, there's just a couple of them that people pay attention to now and feed with their attention. There are gods and goddesses in Africa and in South America and so on. But only the ones that get fed are the ones that we're going to be able to have a relationship with.
I think the traditionalist question here is, how are these not angels or demons?
Well, what is an angel, you see? I mean, if you ask a Christian, what is an angel? Or you ask a Muslim, what is a farishta? I mean, what will they say? This is that those angels are assistants. They're ethereal beings that are assisting God in a particular way. Like the saints. Some people don't believe in saints. I grew up as a Protestant, a Baptist. Nobody believes in saints, but the Catholics very much believe in saints. And so saints and angels, they're kind of similar because they're there to assist people in particular ways.
Okay.
But that's very similar to what devatas are doing also.
Okay. The reason I'm diving so much into the philosophy is because I think to truly understand Aghora, you need to know these things as well. The audiences always want darker, more cinematic questions. That's what does well. But I also wanted this episode to be a little bit about the philosophies. And we'll head into another episode, which is a little more ritualistic and a little darker. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Aghoris in general or people's understanding or misunderstanding of the concept?
Vimalananda was of the opinion that there basically are two paths to reality. One is the path of the Vedas. And the first word in the Veda is Om, which almost doesn't count because that encapsulates everything. But the first real word in the Veda, the first word of the first verse of the first hymn of the first Veda, the Rig Veda, is Agni. And in a Sanskrit text, the first word or the first phrase in the text is something you need to pay attention to through everything that goes on in the rest of the text. So like in the Yoga Sutras, Yogas Chittravritti Nirodha, you should remember that restraining the fluctuations of the mind, that should be your context for everything that goes. So people are doing asanas all the time, but you should be doing asanas not for the world asana competition or to show how great your posture is. It's to make your awareness calm and not fluctuate. In Ayurveda, the first word of one of the big three books is Ragadi Rogan, all diseases beginning with desire. So you have to remember that desire is behind everything. You need to find out what the desires of the patient are, and that's going to tell you why they were doing whatever they're doing that's caused them to become unwell. So in the case of the Vedas, Agni means fire. So the Veda is all about fire, and fire is all about transformation. And the Veda is all about worshiping the fire. Here's the fire. The fire is the thing that has made you and me human beings. It's only been the past maybe 1.5 million years that humans even started to try to work with fire. And it took hundreds of thousands of years till they really got the confidence to really start trying to control it. But without controlling fire, none of this would be here. But people have forgotten what relationship we have with the fire, and they don't actually ever spend time sitting with the fire. What they do nowadays is stay with their screens. And the screen has images and it has colors, and that's what fire is. In fact, the subtle element from which fire comes is called rupa tanmatra, and rupa means form. So people are, whether they know it or not, worshiping the fire when they are looking at their screens, but they're doing it without any awareness. They're doing it in a dull kind of way. So having a direct and personal relationship with the actual fire, with the flame, is something that is really desirable, both in the Veda and in Aghora. So in the Veda, you're working with the fire in a very above board kind of way. You're starting off with light and you're increasing more and more until everything is complete light. In Aghora, you start with darkness. You start with the things that are most difficult to deal with: death, old age, all the secretions from your body. And you stop letting those things interfere with your awareness in a negative way. You bring light into yourself by incinerating those parts of your personality that are tying you down to your limited self-definition. So don't get confused by a bunch of people who are in these cremation grounds and they're showing off, because externally, they may be doing whatever they're doing, but what's really important is what's going on the inside, how they are working with their own skull, how they're working with their own bones, how they're working with their own fire. That's what Aghora really is.
I think we're going to address the details of what you just said in the next episode. The final question I'll ask you now is that, do you think Swami Vimalananda was with us today in this conversation?
My personal experience is that I regularly feel him around, and I certainly think that I do my best to try to permit him to express himself through me. That's something that I think anyone who is doing medicine or astrology needs to do. You need to be allowing the Shakti, the Vidya of medicine or astrology to speak through you, not permitting your own personality to do that. And that applies especially to spiritual things also. You should always be doing your best to minimize your personality and allowing your guru, your devata, allowing reality to speak through you as much as possible. So I definitely feel his presence myself.
Okay. Glad to be doing this with you, sir. And I'm glad that this was the first episode in this space.
Well, may all the future episodes be wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Swami Vimalananda, if you're in there somewhere. So really appreciate it.
So my friends, that was an extremely heavy episode of TRS. We had to cut this one short because it was getting too heavy for me to record it. It was getting heavy for my teammates in the room. And we felt like the subject matter should be divided into 2 episodes. If you enjoyed this one, just watch out for the second episode. You don't even know what's in store when it comes to that one. It's an honor of my life to be relaying these philosophies from the experts to you guys, learning about these philosophies and then sharing it with the community, my family that I'm building online. This podcast is growing into a professional dream that I once had. It's becoming purposeful, it's becoming meaningful. So while I don't want to talk too much about the second episode, I want to say a thank you to you guys that you guys are joining me on this journey to reveal the truths about our ancient culture, about the Indian subcontinent. Thank you. TRS will be back soon. Make sure you download Level Supermind to begin or further your own meditation journey. The link is given down below. And make sure you follow TRS on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. Robert Svoboda will return on the Ranveer show very soon.